When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
It's time for Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Preferred Advisors.
Good Saturday morning to you. This is Karey Brown, Associate Broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. I am here with Jay Coverdell with ServPro. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning, Karey. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So these guys are for your emergency, basically whenever disasters happen. You guys handle all kinds of disasters.
We do. We are, Karey, we're a cleanup and restoration company primarily, and we deal with all types of emergencies relative to water damage or mold damage or, heaven forbid, if somebody has a fire. Those are the emergency services areas that we cover. We also do more, I would say, housekeeping type things in terms of carpet cleaning and duct cleaning. We do biohazard cleanup, other generalized services, but our primary focus is focused around those emergency services. If a water pipe breaks in your house, or the line from the refrigerator comes loose and water goes down into the basement and creates a mess, we focus on trying to restore that environment to the same condition that the house was in prior to that event happening. We say our slogan is like it never even happened. Some folks confuse that with I'm going to get a new house, but the reality is our focus is to basically, in some cases we do restore better than the pre-existing condition, but our goal is to get back to that pre-existing condition as quickly as possible so the interrupt to people's lives is minimized.
Absolutely. I had a friend recently, company came in and installed a refrigerator. I'm sorry, no, it was actually the dishwasher that did it, and did not install the water line correctly. Mm-hmm. And it was, whenever she ran the dishwasher, it was literally going into the basement.
Yes, that's not uncommon, or to have a line rupture, and you're not aware of it. There are people that are elderly and they don't go to their basement anymore, and when that event happens, it can run water for a significant period of time before they even realize there's a problem. So some of those things can, take a small problem and it can get big really quick if you're not in a position to first be aware of it, and then second, know how to react and know what to do.
Absolutely. And, a lot of times what we find, especially when it comes to first-time homeowners and really just homeowners in general, they don't understand when it's time to call homeowners insurance. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's a really good thing that you guys are able to tell them, listen, this is who you call.
Yes. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about my role with ServPro, is being in a position where you can act as a liaison between the homeowner and their insurance agent to try to help both parties understand the situation that's occurring. Will it be covered? Should a claim be filed? To be able to help calm those emotions that are happening at that particular time, because quite often the homeowner's first instinct is, I got to jump in and clean this up. And if there's water standing on the floor in your basement, the first thing you should be thinking about is, do I have a TV plugged into a power strip that might be laying in that water?
Oh, man.
And, can I avoid having worse problems by reacting too quickly? And so those are some of the things that we advise people is, don't get in a hurry about setting a fan and trying to dry things out. If your basement is wet and you're running a fan without doing any dehumidification to dry the air out, you're basically just cross-contaminating your whole house with moist, damp air, and that's how mold starts. And so that's one of the things that we try to focus on really hard is educating them on when we get a call, trying to understand as much as possible about what's happened and be able to give them some very quick advice before we even show up about do this, don't do that. Do you know where the water shutoff is to your house? Can you shut off the water so that you stop the water from coming in and do it safely? Those kind of things we want to try to do in that first call, within the first 15 minutes if possible, to be able to control the environment, make sure that the individual is safe, and then put ourselves in a position where we can respond and begin the mitigation and the cleanup.
Absolutely. And, really, now that we're talking about it, when we're done with the show, take a minute. Go familiarize yourself with where the shutoffs are.
Yes.
Gas, water. Do you have a fire extinguisher?
Mm-hmm.
Go get one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Make sure you know where all those things are.
Make sure you know where those apparatuses are, I guess, for lack of a better term, and how to function them. I mean, that water shutoff valve, it should be turned on and off once a month just to make sure that it doesn't seize up. I mean, you don't want it not to work. If you have standing water in your basement, you may not be able to get to that valve, so it's important to understand where the water shutoff is out in the street or out in your front yard and how to turn that off or how to contact somebody to turn that off. There's a lot of things that can be done by basically preparing or pre-preparing for an event so that when it happens, kind of like having evacuation things in your basement in case of a fire. The people are coached, prepare for that and hope like heck it never happens, but be prepared for it when it is so that you know what to do rather than, moving directly to a state of panic.
Absolutely. You'd be surprised when it's taking place. When I was 7, there are a lot of things that I don't remember when I was young. There are actually years that I don't recall. But when I was 7, I do remember we had a tornado, and it sucked the roof off of the house that we were in.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing my mother in the doorway and hearing her say, "Run." And as I was running to her, the roof was coming off of the house.
Wow.
And there was a tire, which I don't know where it came from, was literally coming down the back of me, and it tore the back of my gown. And so it was just the craziest thing. I mean, to this day, I remember every detail. And I remember my dad. It's the funniest story to this day. He went and he grabbed my twin brother and took him to my mom. And he went back for my oldest brother, who was covered with debris. Mm-hmm. And he was a big guy. I mean, he was 4 years older than we were, and he was covered with debris, and he was cold. And he thought, "Oh my gosh, my son's dead." And he's yanking, he's doing everything he can to get him out from underneath the debris. And my brother said something inappropriate. And my dad said those were the best words he'd ever heard in his life.
Yes.
You don't know until it's happening to you. And there were wires hanging everywhere. And it was the middle of the night. It was 3 days before Christmas. And everything was ruined. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I remember him saying to my mom, "If I don't come back, go out that window." And I remember the look on my mom's face because none of us could have got through that window. It was tiny. And she said, "You better come back because we're not going out." All those different things that nobody would have thought of,
Right.
Which really the only reason why we're still alive is we caught the actual wind around that tornado. Mm-hmm. Had it hit us dead on, we would be dead. But at the same time, it really comes to life to say, plan,
Right.
Have a plan.
Right.
We didn't live anywhere near a train track. It really does sound like a train.
Yeah.
So, all those different things that come and they happen and, how much it disrupts your life. It is really great to have someone like you guys that can come in and say, "Hey, this is what you do and this is how we can help."
That's an amazing story. I'm so glad you and your family were okay.
Yeah.
That would have been a very tough thing to go through. I've lived in Kansas all my life, and I've never seen a tornado. But I do remember, showing my age a little bit, but I do remember 1966. We were 50 miles north of Topeka, but my mother was here in town trying to pick up my sister who was staying with a friend, and they were literally 6 blocks from where that tornado came through. And of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. You couldn't communicate. And I can remember standing out in the street and seeing the green sky on the horizon. Never seen anything like that before, and I'll never forget it. But just not knowing, where your family was, are they safe? And it turned out okay for us. We were very blessed. But it's good to hear those stories, and especially the ones where people are able to survive and able to have a memory that didn't turn into
bad one.
As bad. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very true.
Things, I've never been a stuff person, and maybe that's the reason why, you see how quick things can change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when it comes to, just surviving, say a fire,
mm-hmm.
and so the house catches on fire, how do you guys go in? What do you do first?
So there's a very extensive process to go through to restore order from a fire. Typically, we'll get contacted most likely within 24 hours of an event. I mean, if you have a fire, the first thing you're going to do is call 911 or call the fire department. They're going to come out and go through their process, and that's a busy time, and you are emotionally attached to all the things that are going on around you, and you're not thinking about how am I going to restore that property at that point. But when that first event is complete and there are, the fire trucks are in the process of leaving and those types of things, then you're starting to think about, gosh, what am I going to do next? That's when to give us a call. That's when to reach out to a mitigation company like ServPro and say, this event just happened. How can you guys help me? And we will respond in a very short period of time, trying to comfort them, trying to give them advice on, are there things that you need to have out of that house, like clothing items that you need to have in a short order just so you can continue your life, somewhere else if you aren't able to go back into the home. And then we partner with other companies that can clean those textiles on an emergency basis. We'll come back, most likely it's the next day, we'll come in and we'll start going through that house with the customer to identify what items have been destroyed, what items are salvageable, what items need to be cleaned, and kind of help build those lists and trying to understand and organize the impact of the event and what needs to take place. We do contents cleaning for all the contents out of the fire. If there's reconstruction that needs to be done, we can perform that, or we can coordinate that, or we can kind of work with the customer. Sometimes a customer has a relative who's a contractor or something like that, and they want them to do that part of it. And so we can be very flexible in how we participate and go through that. And then working with the insurance company and the adjuster. These are things that are foreign to the homeowner because they knew they had to have insurance, but hope they never ever had that situation and go through it. We experience that on a daily basis, and so we know those adjusters. We have a relationship and a trust relationship with them, so we can advocate, for the homeowner and for the insurance company, and kind of be that voice in the middle of reason and what we can do. We pack out the contents out of the home. We bring it to our Topeka facility here in town, and we store it, and then go through our own cleaning process to restore and clean as much as we can that can be salvageable. And it's amazing what can be saved in a fire. I used to think that if a fire took place, everything is destroyed, and it's just not the case. Many times there's a significant amount of your personal belongings that have that memory, and that tie to it. that can be salvaged and be saved, and we take those through our warehouse and we clean them right there on site, and then we can store that. And while the house is being restored, or the apartment, or whatever it might be, until it can be moved back in after those repairs have been made. If you have delicate items like artwork or things that are cherished in your family, we have subcontractors or vendors that we can work with who specialize in cleaning those types of things. We had a figurine that was damaged in a particular fire, and it was an heirloom from a collectible group, and it had a small piece of it was broken off, and we were able to work with a company in Kansas City that restored it to where you couldn't even see where the line was, where it was broken off. And so those are the things that we can do to really help out. We assist with, like I said, when you have a fire, there's a lot of cleanup involved. There's both fire damage and water damage from the fire being put out. We go into the home after we've packed the contents out and do a lot of work to prepare for the reconstruction of the home.
And we're going to talk a little bit more after the break about that. So be sure and check us after the word from our sponsors.
Southwest Topeka has a good neighbor. State Farm agent Jim Garrison, now at 29th and Urish. If your current insurance situation has you going around in circles, get off the roundabout and stop in and meet Jim and his wonderfully efficient staff. Let Jim Garrison give you a quote and make the Garrison comparison. He's confident that with State Farm's competitive rates, the right coverage, and his unmatched service, you'll want to make him your new insurance agent. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and Jim Garrison is there for you. Northeast of the roundabout at 29th and Urish.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
Thanks for joining us again. This is Karey Brown, Associate Broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. I am back with Jay Coverdell with ServPro. We are going to be talking about different things that ServPro does. So let's talk about mold. I know in our world on the real estate side, we see very often where people will go in and, especially like with bank-owned properties, and they go in and they cut out the mold, and a contractor will come in and they'll spray it down, typically with something, like a germicide or, and they kills it and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's really important to also ask about air quality.
Absolutely. That's really important, Karey, and I'm glad you brought that up. One of the first things, and I think this is natural instinct, when someone encounters mold, their first thought is to grab a bottle of Clorox and a rag and wipe it off. And what they really don't understand is mold consists of just millions of tiny microscopic spores that as soon as you touch that growth, they break off and they become airborne. And once they're in the air, you might have wiped the existence off of the wall, the stem that was the source of the mold spore. But once those spores are airborne, they'll travel all through the house, and they'll find another spot to either settle where there's moisture available, and they'll start to grow again, or you can breathe those spores into your system, and certain types of mold can be harmful in that situation. So it's really important that when you encounter mold, whether you're walking through a house that's about to be sold or you happen to see it from a water damage that wasn't addressed properly, don't take that first instinct and wipe it off. The first instinct is to call ServPro. That would be great to call us and have so that we can do it professionally. But the reality is what you need to do is mold occurs from two sources. Some type of a material that, like wood or some type of a structure that is edible, and moisture. Those two elements allow mold everything that it needs. If you take away one or the other, mold can't survive. So the first thing we attempt to do is dry the environment by introducing dry air, dehumidifying the area to dry out that wetness and take that moisture away. That neutralizes the growth. It doesn't get rid of those spores, but it neutralizes that growth. And then you mentioned an air quality study. That's really important to understand. If it's visible mold, it may not be necessary to do an air quality study up front because you already know you have it. But once you go through the steps and you clean and you've removed what you think is visible mold, that air quality study on the back end is really important to assure that it's all been removed. And ServPro does not, we do not conduct that air quality study. And the reason that we don't is that it's really important for us to have that third party that's not affiliated with us to perform those studies to identify what needs to be done. That provides a liability type barrier and also an assurance for the homeowner to say, okay, well, the ServPro came in and told me that I had mold and they did their own air quality study and here's their results, right? If I'm telling you there's mold and you need to do something about it, you need to have an independent resource confirming that information. So that's why we don't do the air quality study, but we highly recommend it. When we're brought in to mitigate mold, the first thing we do is we set air scrubbers. And these are basically fans that pull air in from the room, but run them through very microscopic filters to trap those spores that are airborne and eliminate them from going back, from staying into the air source. So as we're cleaning, and like you mentioned, wiping down our chemicals to eliminate the basis of the mold and drying the home out, we're also cycling the air in that house on a repetitive basis to remove those mold spores. When we're done and our cleanup's done, we shut everything off for 24 hours, and then we have a mold study done, and they come in and do that air quality study to determine if there are any more mold spores. And what they do is they'll take a sample of the outside air outside of your house, because mold exists everywhere, and they'll also take samples inside the house and compare the results. And that will give you a true test on whether or not it's completely been mitigated or not. If it hasn't, then they'll give us some idea on where we need to go to do more work in order to eliminate it and assure that it's completely cleaned up.
Absolutely. So you guys also handle vandalism.
We do, and there are certain things from a vandalism perspective that are really, again, cleanup and restoration. If it's vandalism that starts from a fire, as a source, then we have normal protocol that we would follow in that situation. Vandalism, as far as people throwing eggs on your house or painting your back fence or things like that, those are things that we can clean and we can and take off with the appropriate chemicals and take care of that. Taking ink or paint, cosmetic stains, and removing those types of things, we have chemicals that can remove that and try to get that environment back without having to do an extensive restoration process.
So during the break, you talked about water and there being different levels of water intrusion. Let's hit on that briefly.
Sure. That's really important to identify because based on the type of water, the response that you're going to need to take is different. If you have a water pipe break and it's emptying clean water into your house, like from a regular water line or your dishwasher or something like that, and it's clean water, many times we can extract that water and we can dry things out and not have any further damage. But if you have water from a sump pump backup, that's ground source water, that's considered Category 2 water, and that water has bacteria and things in it from outside. I wouldn't consider it as dangerous as sewer backup water with raw sewage contained within it. But in those situations, the process is more extensive. We may have to remove that pad underneath your carpet so that those particles that are trapped in there can be disposed of and repaired. If it's sewer water, I mean, you really need to get rid of that carpet altogether, and you need to look at any walls that had water that were sucked up in the sheetrock or something like that. Those need to be flood cut, and all that needs to be removed from the house in order to eliminate the risk associated with that bacteria. So it's important to know that, the type of water that you have based upon the loss, and the risk that's involved with each type of water.
Absolutely. And when it comes to electronics, what do you guys do whenever there are problems?
So when we take electronics out from a fire specifically, we can clean external pieces of that. If it's severely smoke damage, there are other companies that we can send those electronics to that they can actually clean the inside of that electronic device. That's something that we don't do. And then they can determine whether or not if they can get rid of the smoke odor and without damaging the device, they'll make that attempt. If the device is damaged through that, typically the insurance company will then cover for the replacement of that item because you've made an attempt to try to restore it, rather than just assuming that it couldn't be restored up front. And so that's important from that perspective. Things that you don't own electronic in your house, like your cable box and those things that you rent, we typically don't touch that. You need to take those back to your to the source where you get that stuff and ask to have that replaced.
All right. So if something should happen and they need to get a hold of you, where do they go?
So the best thing to do, if it's possible, is go to the internet and search for ServPro of Topeka, and you'll find contact information there. If that's not available, we do have an 800 number. It's 1-800-ServPro, SERVPRO. That information will hit our national account, and then it will be transferred to the ServPro that's closest to us. You can also call our offices direct at 785-862-0550, and someone will be able to give you direct assistance from that perspective. So there's 3 ways that you can contact us. Certainly recommend that anybody do when they have the chance, especially before something happens, do a little research and find out who the water mitigation people or the fire mitigation people are in your area, and look at their websites and look at their Google reviews and get a feel for who you think is reputable.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Karey.
Hi, this is Rory Chapman with Loan Depot, here to tell you about our next homebuyer class on Thursday, May 2nd from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here at the studio located at 1210 Southwest Executive Drive. We will be going over the loan process with you. I'll teach you about the pre-approval and filling out an application and pulling credit and some tips to help your credit and things like that. And then Karey will be...
I will be going through the buying process, going through everything that you'll need to know to make it a smooth home buying experience.
We will be doing that again May 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. And you can go to my Facebook page to register. If you just search Rory Chapman, RORICHAPMAN, Loan Depot, you'll find my Facebook page and be able to register on the event there.
And if you're looking to buy or sell, be sure and check out our webpage at preferredadvisorsteam.com. You can search 4 different MLSs, so be sure and check that out. And if you're looking to buy or sell, call us at 785-213-5188. And thanks for listening to Real Estate 101.
Thank you for listening to Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Preferred Advisors.